Hey, everybody. As we're wrapping up season 1 of When I Stop Fighting the podcast, I want to tell everyone that I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you listening and or watching, however you're doing that. And I wanted to let you know that I've put together some compilations on sobriety, recovery, on life advice stuff. Probably going to do some with some of the funny clips that we've had over time and some of the funny moments. So take a listen, take a look, and hope you enjoy them. We'll be doing that kind of throughout the holiday season. But as a reminder, for those of you that don't know, I am an author, and we do giveaways every single month from my website, which is Daryl Dittmer, DARYLDITTMER.com. And November, we're giving away a signed copy of my first book, When I Stop Fighting, The Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass, as well as a signed copy of my second book, When You Stop Fighting, The Road You're On is Your Own Asphalt. So want to make you aware of that. And if you can take a listen, take a look, hit my website. We're going to be doing a lot of specials and things like that on the website for the books. My second book, actually, since it's a new release, is out right now. The ebook is only 99 cents, and that'll be for a limited time. So I'd love you to pick it up, read it, and let me know what you think. So be well and enjoy these compilations.
It's not easy, but it's not easy to stay sober, but it's a much easier life, I guess is how I can put it,
Agreed. Yeah, it really is. And I'm continually fascinated by, our quest back then was freedom. Our quest back then was, I just, I don't want to have to think about all this stuff. I don't want to have to feel all this stuff. I want to be free from all that stuff. And come to find out, that's what locked us up. That's what put us in prison inside of our hearts and inside of our minds and inside of our souls.
And what did we bond over? Drinking. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Went right back to the beginning of our relationship where we would go out to bars and drink margaritas until we were, incredibly faded, and did it all over again in our getting back together. And then we're pretty rapidly miserable again. And then I finally got sober for myself, admitted I was an alcoholic. I have a problem. This is about me. I quit worrying about what my husband did. And I started going to the rooms for me in February of 2018 and started going to Al-Anon at the same time. And that is where my life changed.
What a story. There was one thing, I know you've talked a little bit about it, but if you were going to give advice to somebody just embarking on the journey and sobriety, we'll just call it sobriety, but somebody looking to get happier, get better, feel better, embark upon a different way of life, what would your one piece of advice be?
No, see, that's an easy one for me because it's exactly what I did after fighting for so long and losing every battle. Pick someone that is important to you, whose opinion of you care about. So like for me, it was my wife, but for you, it could be a best friend, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, someone that is important enough to you that you care.
So what would you say is your greatest ally? Who or what would be your greatest ally now in your sobriety?
Yeah, I love that question. And I want to touch on the ally part, but something you mentioned about people like not necessarily liking their experience or the process of being sober, like you're 100% right. And I think that's why I've devoted so much of my time and energy into creating the platform, The Sober Butterfly, because I want to showcase the beauty of sobriety. And it's not to gloss over the difficult parts. Like, I recognize it can be really hard, and everyone has a different, journey to sobriety.
Well, I shot him a DM, and I just asked him how he was doing and like, what's going on? What's the next couple of weeks look like for you? And he said, man, he says, I'm really scared. And he says, I'm going to miss my kids so much while I'm away. And, and just listening to him talk, and I'm not listening to him, I'm just reading these texts, but I'm just asking him in DM, just some questions to kind of see where he's at. But, there's hope there. And I'm not the provider of hope, but I can maybe lead somebody to a place of hopefulness by just sitting there and not judging them and reaching out and letting them know that I'm there in a real way in a DM, rather than just retweeting or liking or saying, hey, congratulations. I think it's important for us guys to foster some relationships with each other, to help and encourage each other, because if you evaluate the sober world,
so yeah, it's, there's this thing I know we've talked about in sobriety, and it is talked about in sobriety, but shoulds, we can should all over ourselves, right? The should monster comes out all the time. Oh, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or blah blah blah, right?
Surrender that I didn't really even know was possible, right? And this is a part of our growth and a part of the evolution. And I really believe, we're ready when we're ready, and we can only do as much as we can at a given time, and that's how this process works.
You can make God the doorknob, right? But you just don't be telling me what color that doorknob needs to be, or what kind of see, that's the beauty of 12-step recovery. If you really listen to what's going on there, nobody is telling you what you need to think. It's just the opposite of what most people think. All right.
Have you found that the taking out the garbage part is really where that freedom comes, or is it more of a higher power thing? Is it a bunch of those things? How does that work for you, Drew?
Yeah, for me personally, like I say this like in meetings and stuff, or when I'm just talking to anyone who's sober, or people that are not in sobriety and have made amends and stuff like that. I noticed a turning point for me in the steps when I did that, the fifth step, when I went over all of them, the moral inventory. I went over all my fears. The biggest thing for me was going over all the resentments and then finally making amends. Like I felt lighter ever since, it's like, I felt like, because for me, a lot of drinking and using went on because of a lot of the resentments I had towards myself,
So there's a lot of pull and tug and difficulty in the process, right?
Yeah, and I really like how in 1986 when I got sober, the main game in town was the 12-step program. So that's what I'm steeped in. I don't think it's the only way to go, but it's got the longest track record in research, actually, from Stanford. A guy recently did a study, and it was quite conclusive that 12 steps really help.
But she just kept asking me week after week, well, how would you define your relationship with alcohol? Because every single story I told her on a weekly basis, something would happen, and the common denominator, you probably guessed it, was alcohol. And so after so many weeks of, her asking me this question, I finally realized that I could not control my drinking, and it was ruining my life. Yeah.
And that's the trick, right? That's right. what we hopefully develop over time in terms of our life. And I didn't quit smoking until I was, oh Lordy, 20 some years sober.
Good for you. So you were in your 40s.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. Or
yeah.
And it was 2 weeks into this sobriety, and she just sat on the couch and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And then I just told her, the 5 years worth of all the stuff all the lies I'd done, all the drinking I've been doing, all the hiding it. And, and that was one of the worst days of my life, but also now one of the best days of my life, because she was very close to like taking the kids and leaving or kicking me out that day. And then she had some time to think about it, and we, went through it. But like, I felt so good after that.
So what would you say is I guess, if you were to talk to a newcomer right now and somebody said, you know what, I'm just sick of this stuff and I need to do something about it, and I want to change my life, and I want to quit drinking or quit doing drugs, or where would you direct them, or where would you take them, or how would that go?
Well, I think initially what I'd really want to do is just ask a bunch of questions and just kind of really get the full picture of what's going on with them, and have them describe that to me in their own words, and just sit there and listen and not judge. Because I think that there is a huge, huge fear and of coming to this place of even questioning your drinking, or, being like, wow, I really do need to get sober.
Because when we get sober, then we have relationships, right? That's why I really work Al-Anon too, even though I don't live with an an active alcoholic. But, those patterns for self-sufficiency and safety that we formed in our families, me, the youngest of the four, trying to be perfect, trying to fit in, trying to stay out of the fray. I'll be loved if I get good grades. I'll be secure if I get the knight in shining armor boyfriend. Then if that doesn't work out, I'll get the next one and the next one, and it just quit working. And it was so frustrating that my formula for making myself happy was not working. It wasn't working.
Gosh, where do I start? I struggle when I tell my story about not leaning too heavily on the negative parts and, the more inspirational part. So I'm going to try to do that today, because I think for me, especially in early recovery, that was more impactful when I heard those stories from other alcoholics. So I'm a Midwest boy, much like yourself. I grew up in small town Ohio.